Good morning or afternoon. I hope you guys are having a wonderful night or day. And now we finally get the opportunity to talk about those extra details that we received alongside the gameplay footage in these news articles. If you're interested in learning what the complete first impressions of these articles were, I highly recommend giving them a read, because overall it was a big bag of mixed reviews. There were some good parts and some bad, but alongside waiting to jump in for ourselves to find out how it really is, today we're going to be taking some time to also talk about ways that New World can expand more in the future. And it'll be in a way that doesn't go against their current vision for the game but can still work out for everyone. So let's get started with some of the basic details. First article up is the one that is over at, of course, MMORPG.com. And to start it off, as many of you have already seen from the newly released footage, combat is currently in a state of being classified as fast-paced. And of course we know it's not like Black Desert fast-paced or anything like that, but fast-paced in a sense of an RPG like Witcher 3 or Skyrim. There's weight to every move you make, and it aims to use the skill system to provide a wide variety of armor and weapon choices to customize your playstyle. As we've seen mention of already, multiple weapon skill trees will be a thing, as this article mentions, and you'll be able to multi-specialize in not only different roles for your gear, but you'll also be able to swap to different weapons at will. It looks like this part is level based as well, like we saw in the interview footage. For unlocking your third weapon, for example, you'll need to reach the level of about 30. And on top of that, it's been mentioned that we can in fact expect more weapons being added in the future, which will hopefully contain their own special skill trees too. Plus, we haven't actually seen all the known weapons in the footage yet. We're still missing the gauntlets, the healing staff that's been mentioned in these articles, and at least one other. There was also a lot of suspicion of a greatsword being implemented later on, and honestly that's probably the one that I'd hold out for as well. And I'll be honest though, if they do end up putting greatswords in the game, I do hope that the model for them looks similar to the great axe, or even a bit bigger. And I know how people feel about oversized greatswords along with weapons that are double the size of your character being swung over your shoulder, but I mean, come on, they just look so cool though. So to move on forward, we get to jump into the juicy part. For those of you wondering about the overall map size of the world of Eternum, it looks like Amazon Game Studios has actually already announced it. Now, it wasn't specified if this map size was going to be implemented during launch or beta or later on, but it looks like they are saying that the map size will be around 40 kilometers squared. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, that is actually the size or very close to the map of Skyrim, coming in at a whopping 14.3 square miles, also known as 37 kilometers squared. This will act as a good baseline of comparison, as this right here is a concept picture of the old alpha map of New World, which at first glance does not look to be at the same size of 40 kilometers squared in comparison, but there's only one way we'll find out for sure. Oh, and it looks like on the PvP side of things, when it actually does come to opting in, that we now have confirmation that it can only be done while in a safe zone. So at the very least, for those of us who are nervous that people would be flagging down in the wild to get out of PvP battles or resource defending, it won't be happening. But they can always just walk out of town without the flag on entirely, so there's still that. We're also going to be talking about PvP in a big part in a little bit, but first, let's touch up on these other details. First off, it also looks like the media did not get to test out the Horde mode, as Amazon Game Studios is still making tweaks to it. We've still got some time before beta begins, but this is one mechanic that I would really hope to see more than most of them, because players will need some of that player-verse environment content to look forward to. And this, along with the dynamic events and whatever farming areas or bosses they might have in-game, just might be enough to hold us over until we start getting some more additions. I do suspect that early on there will be a lot of feedback regarding the player-verse environment and the PvP from the population. I feel like it's inevitable at this point that the game will be under a very big microscope at beta and launch, but hopefully they'll be able to get the ball rolling right out of the gate. They also said that each weapon will have a total of about 30 different skill unlocks to choose from, which I would assume would also include passives, unless we're going to have over 30 different unique weapon skills to choose from, which wouldn't be so bad now that I think about it. Sounds kinda crazy, but not bad. Next, they dive into the complete progression systems of New World. There are a total of 5 of them to be exact. We have weapon mastery, trade skills, faction reputation, territory standing, and a brand new one we haven't talked about yet called PvP Elder Game, which could actually be PvP endgame, but we're going to talk about it nonetheless. At first I thought this last one was some sort of typo, but after reading it a bit more, it totally seems like this might be some sort of honor system. Now we're going to dip into that one in a little bit, but first let's talk about the crafting and gathering. Now the weapon mastery is self-explanatory, but for the crafting ones, it seems like for these specific skills we are offered more than a dozen of these different trades, and they expect this number to grow over time. And I'm sure some of you out there will most definitely want a little bit of fishing added along with animal husbandry and taming. And with the current system, I couldn't agree more. Not to mention the housing pet system, so why not just grow your own pets from babies? Or mounts if that system gets implemented later on, with the ability to trade them. Now for faction reputation, this one just simply involves doing things for your faction, so probably things like faction quests that we've heard about beforehand in the settlement blog. Territory standing is the one that's simply increased by just doing things in a region, whether it's killing mobs, crafting items, gathering, etc. All that adds up to your total territory standing, which is also the level that dictates when you can purchase a house. This also seems to be the one that you can grind almost forever, as I did notice that in the gameplay footage we saw, that one of the media characters had a standing level over 300, which sounds like it's going to be a crazy grind for those of you who like to go completionist out there. Let's just cross our fingers for achievements related to those standing levels and rewards to match them as well. And finally, we have the infamous PvP Elder game. Although, like I said before, they could have totally meant to say endgame. I'm not so sure, to be honest. But this one sounds like an early form of some sort of honor system that I hope they have. This is how we start to get into the topic of how those of you who are still craving the absolute chaos and blood-rushing adrenaline of PvP can still be satisfied. It's stated that the progression of it is only gained through participating through castle sieges, which will earn you character experience along with chances at higher and better loot. And while this will clearly be a big part of endgame, they say that you don't have to be at max level to participate in these wars. They stress that any character can beat any player if their skills or tactics are better. And of course, this is where we're about to jump right in. Now, like we've already talked about plenty of times before, even if the aspect of open world PvP does not fit into Amazon Game Studios' vision any longer, there are still features that players that enjoy PvP do know and love. I'd like to direct your attention to World of Warcraft as the simplest example. Back in vanilla, or most notably right now in classic World of Warcraft, most of the player versus player action consisted of open world PvP, and it did include that for quite a while until players got the main two features that arguably became the backbone of the game's player versus player content, and those are the arenas and the battlegrounds. Now I know what you're thinking, how can we have arenas and battlegrounds in an open world sandbox though? Well, I'll tell you how. Think about Gloria Victis and think about Life is Feudal, games that did fulfill both parts. They too acted as open world sandboxes, but both of them did in fact have instance PvP scenarios, and for New World, it could even be as simple as that. Now I wouldn't expect this to be coming early in the launch or beta, but I like to keep this type of feedback fresh, so we can talk about how to help drive the game in the right direction. Amazon Game Studios says they aim to be a customer-centric developer, but they also want to design a game that has a chance of being added to the roster of the greats. And if we want these MMOs to be successful, it'll be our job as players to meet them in the middle, if not all the way. So for PvP, let's say for the battleground aspect, we get a queue system, similar to games like Ascent Infinite Realm. We get an interface window that we can open up to queue for either PvP battlegrounds or arenas. For battlegrounds, maybe we can get around 25 versus 25 players and at least 2 to 3 different maps to start with. Let's say half the size of territory battles to be safe, and it would be more than easy to fit multiple games with at least 1,000 players per server. Now for arenas, let's say we get 1 vs 1s, 3v3s, and 5v5s, with the option of choosing between pre-made queues and random queues, with equalized gear, so help me God, please, equalized gear. And when the queue pops, players get teleported into them from anywhere in the world, and we can have different maps with different objectives. Let's say maybe 1 or 2 maps for each mode in arenas, and maybe in the battlegrounds in one of the maps or modes we could even have the corrupted or other factions thrown into the mix as a player versus environment factor to contend with. I have a strong belief that this kind of content could easily hold players over for months, if not a full year, as long as it's done right. But there has to be a couple of no-nos. The first one would be, if we're going to suggest instance PvP, there cannot be any time gating. This kind of thing would fit into normal dungeons if that were to become a thing in the future, but of course it would make sense for hardcore raiding and the harder tier dungeons, in the sense that there's a limit on how many you can do per day or week. This is a system that seemed to work pretty well overall in World of Warcraft's early days, but it's also no secret that every mainstream MMO on the market has some form of PvP in it. Even a story-driven game like Final Fantasy XIV has its own slice of it. It's certainly something to consider and a good way to pull in those players that will be greatly missing that open world PvP aspect. One more thing that the article mentions is that we actually might be seeing player numbers higher than 1,000 when the game goes into its full launch, saying that they are planning ballpark-wise for not just 1,000, but between 1 and 2,000 if possible. I wouldn't put it past them being able to reach those numbers at all, considering how powerful their server tech must be. But if we get those numbers going, I would imagine that we will for sure need to get a bigger map with some more territory to fit everyone on it. Now after that, just to include a few more details since the MMORPG article dived into the bulk of it, IGN also gave some details about the game despite their impression of New World being rated less satisfactory than the others. To start with, they do mention that for lore, it appears that the story of New World is going to be completely scattered all around the world. So this means for you lore hunters and all of us interested in the story in general, we'll probably be waiting a while before getting the full picture of what New World is really about. They then described the quest as being in a state very similar to the town projects. Go here and kill X amount of that, go there and gather this, or talk to a new person, that sort of thing. One thing that I'd like to point out though is that although this questing sounds like it's in early stages or may not be up to par for some people, that quest designer position that we talked about that was on their job listings a few weeks ago, that listing is no longer there, which of course leads us to believe that they've either been filled or maybe even on the off chance removed. But this could mean that they could already be planning to rework or greatly improve the questing system at a later date, maybe even get an entirely new one for expansion-based content, which wouldn't entirely be out of the realm of possibilities. It wouldn't be the first time we've seen a game make a huge breakthrough on player satisfaction when it got to its first or second expansion. I still hear to this day on how Burning Crusade was without a doubt one of the best, if not the best, World of Warcraft expansions, which I never got to experience by the way, but that's a long story. And I'm still crossing my fingers for some more types of dynamic events, including even mega dynamic events with chains leading up to them, just like Guild Wars 2 is able to pull off. If you guys have ever tried out Silver Waste or maps similar to it in that game, you'll know what I'm talking about. We could use some global objectives in New World that could be territory based, or it might even end up getting the player base involved. They also say that for character creation they saw different hairstyles and face presets, but for IGN that overall it felt a bit barren. I'm expecting a basic character creation solely because I feel like they're planning to focus more on the gameplay mechanics before they start going as deep into the character building itself. But as always, if MMOs have proven anything, that's certainly a system that always needs some lovin'. Now PC Gamer's article dives into a few, but equally important mentions. The first was that when the topic was brought up about mounts specifically, Amazon Game Studios told the press that there are none currently, but they would be added if players want them. And please allow me to say that I am all in for a mount system in a game like this. And even though I totally get why some people would not want them, for reasons like it might make it too quick of an experience to explore the world, or maybe they can make it too easy to get in and out of combat situations. But to that I would say, most of the sandboxes that were ever loved on the market did actually have mounts in them. Take Darkfall, Mortal, of course Albion, and hell I even believe Ultima Online had mounts if I'm not mistaken, and I just feel like they add more of an experience than they take away. Unless they're flying ones, because at that point, yeah, I could totally see where the issue could arise. PC Gamer also brought up healing magic in combination to fire, so we might be getting a comeback of those gauntlets or a brand new healing staff in one of these upcoming phases. Amazon Game Studios also said that there's no reason to expect a delay in the release, so it appears they're going full steam ahead still. However, the very last detail to touch on that's now been mentioned is there's a possibility of expansions being added later on down the line, with naval combat possibly. This is the most important part of this one because an expansion could be exactly what the game needs to fill the gaps that the player base might feel are missing. This could be where we get the expanded PvP system, along with mounts, more areas to explore, a fully functioning quest system, and more. No matter what happens during the launch of the game, what I will say is that sometimes it doesn't matter where it starts, but where it ends up. If Amazon Game Studios can turn this game over time into one that either a sandbox lover or a traditional MMORPG player could enjoy, it'll end up as a success in my book. Just be sure to remember that if the game doesn't suit your needs right away at the beta or launch, don't forget to keep looking back. But with that folks, let me know what you guys thought about the articles and the suggestions talked about today, and I hope you have a wonderful night or day, and farewell.